The Word of God teaches us that the Holy Ghost fell on the day of Pentecost. And the scripture says there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire. And it sat upon each of them. So I want to sing this today. Sit on me, Jesus. Like cloven tongues. So everyone sing.
Peace and blessings, everybody. This is Exposing the Works of Darkness with Brother Dunbar. Yet again, we have another episode of Exposing the Works of Darkness. We are attacking that Minnesota fraud, and there's many other frauds. But like the song said, Holy Ghost power. That's what you need. That's what we all need. That's what the world needs. First and foremost, give all praises and honor and glory unto the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. With there is no other that can save us. There's no other that can provide for us. There's no other that is worthy to be praised. We give thanks and honor to the holy prophets and holy apostles in whom he's sent in times past, and honor to our current day apostle, Pastor Gino Jennings, and we give honor unto the many ministering brethren who labor alongside with him in word and doctrine, and to all the brothers and sisters that are striving and fighting faithfully to hold tight on the faith. We give thanks unto you for your unwavering stand, and we thank you for your viewership and the time you have taken out of your busy day to be here. Greetings to Brother Nia Maxwell. Peace and blessings. Greetings to you, Brother Ham. Peace and blessings unto you, brother.
Greetings. Yeah. Give me a second. I got to go ahead and pay for this gas and grab my coffee. You already know where I'm at. So just give me a few seconds. Give me a few minutes.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay.
So this here, and the reason I am tackling these subjects here, these are the subjects that many of us are unawares or maybe don't quite understand, right? And it's good to hear both sides of the story, as we learned this weekend. Hearing the whole matter is a better than a half-sided story, right? But enough said about that. Just a reference point to why we should hear the other part. We always hear that the people of the United States have forgotten the poor. Well, that's not the case. Do some? Sure. Do some politicians? Absolutely. A lot of them do, right? I can agree. That does happen. I'd be a fool not to. But to make it as though everybody across the board, we struggle together. We work hard for what we have, obviously provided, we know, by the Lord, but we fight hard and we work hard for what we do have, whether it's a little or a lot. Either way, we've been blessed to have something, and we've worked hard for it, right? And what you earn, you should get. Which I do want to do another episode, Lord willing, on capitalism versus crony capitalism. There is a difference. People are under the illusion that capitalism is evil. We can get into that at another point. But capitalism here is a wonderful thing, because you should get what you work for. If you work hard, if you're earning a living, that's what you've earned. Nothing wrong with that. Some may do more and may have more success based upon, first and foremost, the Lord, and some, the sinner, just basically on how hard he works, right? I mean, the sinner does work hard. I mean, you can't sit there and say he doesn't. How he gets it, I don't know, but I'm not going to assume it, right? But this fraud has gone to a level that's beyond theft. It's straight robbing the people. And when I say the people, there's two types of people that are being robbed here. There's the people who are poor that aren't getting those funds because others are taking it and misusing it and stealing it. And then those who are paying for those funds. Because if you think these social programs just come out of nowhere, you're crazy. These social programs come from taxpayer dollars. So it's not only stealing from those who need it, who are poor, it's also stealing from those who are funding it. You're stealing people's money. And we all know what the scriptures say about stealing. I don't have to go into it, right? It's wicked to steal, period. Yes, we know politicians do it. We know that, but I want to get into something some others may not know. And with that, I want to I have 3 different videos. 2 of them are just straight people speaking about the amounts and what was done, who was responsible. 2 of them are that. There's no commentary on it. It's just government and things like that talking about it and the Treasury and what they found. Then I'm going to get into, because when it comes to economics, Thomas Sowell is a bright mind. I have a Thomas Sowell video lined up talking about these things, okay? So without further ado, let's get into the first video, and feel free to leave your comments whether you agree with it or not. That's fine. I'm not going to sit here and go crazy on you or freak out on you. I'm going to just, we can have a conversation. And the panel is open for anybody who disagrees or agrees, and we can have a conversation, and that's fine. So without further ado, here we go.
The Treasury will be undertaking to increase transparency and crack down on fraud in Minnesota. First off, we have followed the money and identified the money services businesses, MSBs, that have transferred taxpayer funds overseas. Our team at FinCEN has just provided formal notification to these businesses that they are under federal investigation.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base.
These bits and pieces that have been bubbling up over the years, package it into a national story, catch the attention of the president, of Secretary Bessent.
Even though it is cold outside, sunshine is the best antiseptic. And we are going to clean this out. We are going to stop it. We are going to make recoveries. And as Jennifer said, we are going to get the money flowing back to people like her organization who help the children, seniors. So I am very hopeful that we will right the ship and that we will emanate out from Minnesota into the other 49 states and ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse. The GAO, the General Accounting Office, believes that there is between 300 and 600 billion of fraud that occurs via the U.S. government every year, around 10% of our spending, in between 1 and 2% of GDP. Last week, President Trump indicated that he would like to raise the defense budget by $500 billion. We could do that and make our nation more externally safe by having an internal audit of where this fraud and abuse is coming from. And I want to thank you for all your work you've done.
And thank you everyone for being here today. This has been such an important discussion.
In this fraud and recover funds for the American taxpayer.
Thank you. I see Claire Jones with the Financial Times has a question. Claire Jones, please ask your question.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to ask the question and for making time to do this today. You mentioned at the Economic Club of Minnesota yesterday that this is costing U.S. taxpayers $600 billion in fraud. What's your kind of baseline targets for how much you expect to recover with the sorts of measures that you've announced today? And do you have any sorts of timeline to really close this rather substantial gap in what the U.S. taxpayer ought to be receiving?
Well, because of the gross incompetence by the Waltz administration and the lack of leadership, we are just putting all that together now. But as I just said to the previous question, all entities in the administration will be pursuing this so that we can get the biggest recoveries possible, and we will see. And we are going to leave no stone unturned, whether.
So that video there basically just talks about some things, but I think the other video I have is a little better.
Yeah, I'm back, brother Jeremy.
All right. Peace and blessings to PDD. Thank you for joining. Thank you to everybody else who has joined and who will watch this in the future as well. Thank you. So
God bless everyone. Yeah, I was just saying, God bless everyone, and thank y'all for supporting my brother Jeremy. Actually, this is a pretty good topic. Me and him discuss this stuff all the time. This is like almost a daily discussion for us. The guy that you had up, I really don't care for. I get it. He's a homosexual. It kind of throws me off. Like, I don't really care for him.
Okay.
Like, I don't really watch his interviews anymore.
Okay.
But I mean, don't get me wrong. Listen, he went to school for it. He went to school for it and this and that or whatever. And I get it, right? You know what I mean? Homosexuals got to work. It's like lesbians have to. I get it. You know what I mean? But I don't have to watch them. I just don't, you know what I mean? Sometimes it bothers me to sit up and, because I'm thinking like, do you really know what you're talking about? And I hate to think like that because they went to school for that.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's just me.
When it comes to economics, it's just sheer fraud. As long as the facts are correct and accurate, I personally don't care as long as they're accurate. Because even the sinner can be right on natural things, right?
That's true. That's true. But like I said, he can very well be accurate on all. Here's the problem, though, right? My problem is this: they're quote unquote weeding out a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah.
But what about the abuse that's happening to the everyday people in society, right?
Correct.
It's like they haven't fixed these grocery prices. They haven't fixed inflation. You know what I mean? All of this stuff. But like, listen. They're giving you a B-side property, which is just window dressing until you actually look inside of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They lied about the job. They lied about the jobs. They had lower prices on a few things and fuel. Yeah, I get it. I understand why fuel is low. But here's the thing. If it doesn't play out with the everyday necessities, I'm going to have a problem with that. Now, don't get me wrong. I said I'll give Trump credit. He's only been in office a year now, right? So now you got another year to prove that what you're doing makes sense. See, because the fact that everything keeps going up and it hasn't settled, I have a problem with that. I get about the waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm going to tell you, I stopped even thinking about that because at the end of the day, that's not really relevant to us because we're not going to get any of that money that's going to change the prices of groceries and different things like that. But it's good to talk about that because you got a bigger problem you got two problems in Minnesota and many other states: illegal immigration and fraud. Two things that's running side by side. So it's just me. It's something I think about.
So to kind of go back on what you're saying, I agree. We need to see. It's good that some steps are made, right? And you have to make some steps to get to other steps. Is the way I look at it because it's not just going to be fixed overnight. It's not going to be fixed in 4 years. Let's be real.
No.
How long it took.
But we should get some kind of relief, even if it's only a little bit.
Correct. But it took so long for this to happen over so many decades for this to compound to the point where it's at now. You and I both know
Right.
this stems back to the 1960s.
True.
All of this.
It didn't start for you. It didn't start when Biden was in office. It didn't start when Obama was in office. It was before them.
It started with Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah.
And Lyndon Johnson, the first culprit, he started it. And as we all know, if you take a snowball and you start at the top of the hill, it takes time for that snowball to get bigger and hit the bottom. It takes time. So
they kept kicking it down the road.
I learned with Thomas Sowell when he broke down the facts about that. But the fraud is a good step, because starting, if you look at it from this point, starting with helping the people who actually need help, who are low income or poverty, they're able to have more of those resources now because the fraud is being caught. That's how I'm looking at it.
I'll say this. I'll say this to your point, Brother Jermaine. I agree with you that it would be good helping lower income people. Only problem is, it's going to take years before Trump's get out of office before they actually see any of those funds.
Correct. It has to continue. I agree. I agree with you. It has to continue, in the next administration has to continue this, because the more
took 30 years to break, it's going to take 30 years to fix it.
Of course, the more it'll probably take longer than 30 years, to be honest with you.
Well, at a minimum.
Yeah, so here's the thing. The more social programs you have, the more poverty you create.
Yeah.
Because if there's more social programs than there are people who can survive, where does that money come from?
People.
Money can either go one of two ways, up or down. It's going one way or the other. It's not going 8 different ways. There's only 2 ways money can go, higher or lower. There's only 2 ways.
And I'm gonna be honest. You know something though, Brother Jeremy? I think they should raise the threshold to people that can get food stamps for a little food assistance for the people that's contributing to society. I think that, because you would have a lot. My thing is this. This is what I think, right? I think if they contribute, and I know this is off a subject, so my bad for this, but I think if they contribute to the people that are baseline, mid class, and stuff like that, as far as giving them a little assistance as a leg up and stuff like that for maybe 6 months to a year, in order for them, they're no longer than that, right? But just to help them so money can be put back into society. I think they should do that. Not just for lower income. Not just for lower income, but for middle class. And I hate to say it, not for illegal aliens or anything like that, because like the dude Bavino, right, was talking to him today. And he was talking to a lawyer. He was talking about, well, it's not illegal for somebody to cross the border, blah, blah, this and that. So he said to her, yes, it is. It is illegal. It's not, it's not civil. When you cross the border, you're actually breaking a federal law. And I didn't know that crossing the border was a federal charge.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Of course it is. That's a.
Now it's different if a person comes here with a visa. Now it's civil if a person comes here with a visa and they overstay. That's civil. Yeah. Doesn't matter how long they're here. It's still civil. Right. But somebody that comes across the border illegally, I didn't know it's a federal offense, and that's crazy, right? Because I understand why they say that, because they want stiffer penalties and stuff like that. That's the reason why they have to fight so hard for this. But anyway, man, go ahead and finish your point, man. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good, because that's another contributing factor, because those people are reaping the benefits from the social governmental funding, right? They are. Yeah. So that's kind of on.
And here's the thing. Yeah, and I want to make this clear though. Listen, I have no problem with somebody coming from another country. I don't care what nationality you are.
Correct.
Long as you don't cut in front of other people that's trying hard to get here legally.
Correct. You
So,
don't cut corners.
Yeah. So I want to clarify that.
Correct. So I'm going to get into this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Brother. No, finish. No, you finish. Go ahead, Brother Ham.
No.
Finish.
I have nothing else to say. I have nothing else to say.
All right, so I'm going to get into this video. We'll play a little bit. Let me know, Brother Ham, if you want me to stop. And feel free, brothers and sisters, to comment. Whether you agree or disagree, it's all right. There's no love.
Oh, well, you got one of my favorite. Hey, you got one of my favorite senators up there, right there.
So I want everybody to contribute. Let me know what you think. Your thoughts are important. Your thoughts contribute to the conversation. So don't be shy to type in whatever you think as far as agreeing, disagreeing, and why. That's fine. That's what this is for.
There has been massive welfare fraud in Minnesota. It's staggering. It's stunning. It's astounding. It may rise to the level of $9 billion. Now, it's an uncomfortable truth that at this juncture, most of that fraud appears to be centered in the community of Minneapolis among people of Somali ancestry. Some have said and suggested that it's racist to say that. Facts are not racist. So far, there have been 90 people charged.
I had to stop because when he said facts are not racist, that's a Thomas Sowell quote.
Yeah. And then I had to go with what's his name, Ben Shapiro's point. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Correct. Facts are facts. Correct.
Yeah.
It's up to you to take it. But I wanted to let you guys know that's a Thomas Sowell. He quoted Thomas Sowell. Facts are not racist. And they're not.
Yep. If somebody's curious, Thomas Sowell is black.
Most of whom
Yeah, exactly.
are of Somali descent. Let me explain what this thievery, this industrial scale fraud was all about. It was centered around Medicaid. The GAO says that of that $1 trillion I talked about that the American people spend on welfare, as much as $250 million, $250 billion, maybe more, 250 billion or more is stolen. And it's got to stop. So it was in childcare, housing, autism, food. $9 billion. We're spending $1 trillion a year of American taxpayer money to help poor people, provide welfare, and GAO estimates that about at least 250 billion is being stolen every year. I want to talk about a serious subject, Mr. President. I want to talk about welfare fraud, taxpayer money. Now, I want to make it clear that I love Minnesota. I love Minnesota. But I do not like people, whether they live in Minnesota or elsewhere, who steal money from the poor. There ought to be a special place in hell for them. By now, unless you are still living in your parents' basement playing video games, you know that there has been massive welfare fraud in Minnesota. It's staggering. It's stunning. It's astounding. it may rise to the level of $9 billion of taxpayer money meant for the poor. $9 billion. Now, it's an uncomfortable truth that at this juncture, most of that fraud appears to be centered in the community of Minneapolis among people of Somali ancestry. Some have said and suggested that it's racist to say that. Facts are not racist. What I just said is just a fact. So far, there have been 90 people charged, most of whom are of Somali descent. That's just a fact. There are over 100,000 people of Somali ancestry in Minnesota, most of them in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And the vast majority of them vote in a bloc, as is their right. And a vast majority of them vote in a bloc for Democratic candidates, as is their right. Some will say Kennedy's being a racist for pointing that out. Let me say it again. Facts are not racist. They're facts. It's already come out at some of the trials. And not all of the folks being charged are of Somali ancestry. I want to make that very clear. But most of them are. Again, just a fact. I apologize for my voice. Now, let me explain what this thievery, this industrial scale fraud was all about. It was centered around Medicaid. And as you know, Mr. President, Medicaid is a federal program administered by the states. We put up most of the money to provide health care, health coverage for poor people, for pregnant women, for children, and for disabled people. Now, President Obama, through Obamacare, extended Medicaid to some folks in the middle class, but still the main purpose of Medicaid is to help poor folks and disabled folks. Because in America, we help our friends. You know, I was looking at a number the other day. In the last 50 years, the American economy has grown 142% in the last 50 years. The American economy has grown 142% in the last 50 years. Pretty extraordinary number. Welfare spending in America has grown 765%.
I want to stop there. In 50 years, the American economy has grown 142%.
Yeah.
In that same time span, the low income has increased by 700%, the spending.
Yep.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
More people are in poverty, the more the taxpayer pays, and this fraud is part of that. And we don't know how long it's been going on. I can't say.
Yeah, they said since 2012.
So
2014.
Okay, let's put.
They've been investigating. No, let me say. They've been investigating this since 2014.
Yes, so that's 12 years, going on 12 years. That's just 12 years. We don't know about prior to that. I don't know. But imagine the amount of money that has been stolen from taxpayers and
sent to another
country, but people are living off of the government. People that don't even have businesses, but have a business. And what I mean by that is they have an actual building, but they don't run a business there. And that's daycare. Yeah, that's daycare. There's daycares, food stamps, Medicare, all of that. And if you notice the 4 groups that Medicare is for, and everybody is saying we don't take care of the poor. If you $1 trillion out of taxpayer dollars is given to the poor every year. That's a lot of money.
Yep. Well, that's the reason why, and I have to say, what President Trump is doing makes sense. Taking the lazy people off. It doesn't make sense to people that's lazy. It makes sense to people that's poor.
Correct. And Brother Ham, the other day when we were talking, you said a very true statement about lazy and poor. And for everybody, I would like them to hear this because this is very accurate. If Brother Ham, if you wouldn't mind repeating exactly what you were explaining to a certain individual you were talking to.
So when I was talking to my wife the other day, and I've said it before when me and Brother Jeremy was talking, I kind of said it in passing, but I didn't go into detail about it. But I said to my wife, and I was talking to her, and I said there's a difference between a poor person and a lazy person. Now, a poor person could be a hardworking person, could be middle class or just above the line of middle class, and they're deserving of those funds. But you take a lazy person, it could be a rich lazy person, it could be a poor lazy person, it could be a homeless lazy person. But these are what you call entitled people. So it's always going to be a difference between a poor person and a lazy person. Like you could be a poor rich person. You could be somebody that maybe has $1 million as far as your net worth, and you're just barely making it, even at being worth $1 million. So again, there's a difference. You could be poor, or you could be lazy. A poor person is a person that maybe works hard to make ends meet, and they're struggling. A lazy person games and always try to find an angle in order to keep from working. That's a lazy person. So there's a difference. You can't loop the problem is the government puts both of those two together. And it's an issue that they haven't fixed. And to be honest, the only person that I've seen that's addressing the difference between poor and lazy is President Trump. So yeah, that's the difference.
That's a very true statement. And also, this is why I'm going to go back to the big beautiful bill. What they said, it's for able-bodied people have to work 20 hours. Able-bodied, which means that you're capable, which goes exactly what Brother Ham was saying. A lazy person. It's not a poor person. That's not a disabled person. That's a lazy person. Somebody that wants to back of somebody else's hard-earned money. And you wonder why it's smaller and your paycheck doesn't pay what used to be able to pay before. It's this one of many situations that contribute to it.
Yeah, that is it. Because I mean, a disabled person, I'm not talking about a disabled person. And you know what's weird though? But it's actually a difference between a lazy disabled person and a poor lazy person. Because I've seen those too. There's so many, our society is really classified where we see it, right? Even Jesus made a difference, right? Even Jesus made a difference when he was talking about the poor and the lazy person. When he said that if a man don't work, he don't eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk about the ones that he didn't talk about. He didn't even go into detail about the ones that were lazy. He didn't even go into detail about them because that's the fact of society. You have the lazy and you have the poor. Some people that don't earn their way in life. They don't work to earn anything. They're always trying to have somebody do something for them.
Correct.
So yeah, I was just thinking about that. Now I really want to do more detail into that because I realized that because in that statement, if you don't work, you don't eat. Right?
Yeah.
So if somebody's sitting around and expecting somebody to do something for them, and they're an able body, that statement applies to them.
Correct.
And that adjusts the lazy and the poor person.
They're poor because they're lazy.
Yeah. Because you know something though, Brother Jeremy, I was looking at this when they first said that they got to work 80 hours in a month, and this lady was talking about she can't do that.
Well,
and she shouldn't have to work for her assistance. Man, shut.
Well, I would ask the question:
Yes.
Should I have to pay your bills for you because you don't want to make the effort?
Yeah, but to her, I wouldn't ask her that.
Well, whatever she says,
she sure would say, "Yep, you should."
Whatever that's fine. But I would ask that question, and to anybody that listens to that woman who mentioned that, and that woman, and whoever believes that woman, that's the same question I would ask them. Not just that woman, anybody that believes that, or has that type of rationale, if I dare use that word. But I want to go into this video a little more because I really, the more important one I want to get to, not that this is, let me rephrase that. I really want to get into how Thomas Sowell destroys the narrative because I love how he destroys the narrative. But this one's about 20-something minutes long. I do want him to get out the facts and the reality. Now, he makes a very good point. So I want everybody to pay close attention. Whoever is listening, whoever will listen, pay close attention to what this man says because he makes a valid point.
So I get a little upset when some people say, well, you know, the American people are selfish. We spend over $1 trillion a year helping our neighbors who are less fortunate than us, mostly the poor. In our country, I've said this before, if you're hungry, we'll feed you. If you're homeless, we'll house you. If you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. Other countries let their fellow citizens die in a ditch. We don't do that in America. The American people have stepped up to the plate. So when people steal this money, this $1 trillion plus a year that we spend helping our neighbors, when people steal that money, it offends me. When they steal from the poor and they steal from the American taxpayer, it offends me equally. And the folks in Minnesota and elsewhere who stole this money, who took a giant Great Dane whiz down the leg of every taxpayer and poor person in America, every one of them ought to go to jail. There were it looks like so far there are 4 programs. Medicaid, and let me just say, the federal government puts up most of the money for Medicaid, not all of it. In some cases, the federal government puts up as little as 50%. In some cases, 90% of the money being spent on Medicaid comes from federal taxpayers. We design the rules at the federal level. We put up most of the money, but the states are supposed to implement the program, and they're supposed to combat fraud, and many of them don't. The GAO says that about of that $1 trillion I talked about that the American people spend on welfare, as much as $250 million, or I'm sorry, $250 billion, maybe more, 250 billion or more is stolen. And it's got to stop. And I'm going to talk about a solution in a moment. But let me tell you what was happening in Minnesota. One of the things Medicaid does, along with the food stamp program, is to feed people, particularly children. So what these thieves in Minnesota were doing, they were setting up these fictitious corporations and applying to Governor Tim Walz's Medicaid office for money to distribute to the poor. And Governor Tim Walz's welfare office would give them hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, the thieves running these fictitious corporations sucked it up like a Hoover Deluxe. And then these fictitious corporations would go to restaurants in the community, many of them in the Somali community, and say, here's the deal. I want you to fill out a report saying you fed all these poor people. Of course, you're not feeding anybody. Just lie. And give me the report. And I'll give you a percentage of the money that I'm stealing from the American taxpayer and the people of Minnesota. And that's what they did. But they didn't just limit it to food. It was industrial scale fraud. Next, they moved to health care. They formed some formed fictitious corporations, companies, saying we're going to deliver I said health care, I meant child care to poor people, homeless people. And so the fictitious company run by these thieves would go to Governor Walz's agencies and say, give us a bunch of money. We're going to house homeless people. And Governor Walz would give them the money, and the thieves sucked it up like a Hoover Deluxe. And then they went to a bunch of other of folks in the community and said, henceforth, you're in the housing business, and you need to fill out a report. It's a lie. Fill out a report saying you're providing housing for a bunch of people. Of course, they weren't. And then we, the thieves who got the money from Governor Walz, will kick you back a little bit of the money. Did they stop there? No. Then they moved into, I just described housing, they moved into child care. Under Medicaid, you can use money to provide child care. So the thieves formed a bunch of new fictitious companies and went to Governor Walz and his agencies and said, give us a bunch of welfare money, Medicaid money, give folks who are poor child care. And then the thieves running the fictitious company went to families, many of them in the Somali community, and said, do you have a child who's autistic? If so, we want to sign them up. But if some of the families said, no, we don't have a child who's autistic, the thieves said, don't worry about it. Lie. Tell us you have a child who's autistic. And whether your child is autistic or not, we're not going to provide any services for your children, but we will kick you back some of the money. It's disgusting. So it was in child care, housing, autism, food. $9 billion and climbing. Now, Governor Walz, in fact, I probably shouldn't repeat this, but I read something on the internet the other day. Somebody made an observation. They said, and I don't want to paint with too broad a brush because there's some fine child care services in Minnesota as there are elsewhere, but But the person on social media asked a question: How do you know if you've discovered one of these fictitious child care services? Well, you go there and no one's inside, but the owner pulls up in a Lamborghini, and that's what happened. The people who were stealing the money directly from Governor Walz and then giving it to the folks that were helping them, the fictitious restaurants, or the restaurants creating fictitious lists of people they fed, autistic children they were helping who weren't autistic. They took the money too, and all of them had a big old party. They bought cars, they bought jewelry, they took expensive vacations, they sent money back to Somalia. There is an investigation going on right now, I'm not saying it's true, that some of the money might have gone to terrorist organizations in Somalia. American taxpayer money that these people were taking out of the mouths of poor people. Now, Governor Walz says,
so that in itself, and how does that make you guys feel? I know it makes me angry. It makes me upset to hear that.
Agreed.
You just think about them. Think about all the people who don't have, that can't get because of that.
Yeah, they don't care.
So I mean,
They don't care.
Yeah. What are the thoughts from you from the people listening? It's crickets. It's crickets in the chat.
Yeah.
And if we are this critical on politicians, why can't we be this critical on people that do this?
Yeah.
Why is there a partiality? Where is the outrage?
Yeah. A lot of people grown complacent. They just allow it to happen.
It's theft. So, so that's what they were doing.
Yeah, mute for a sec. I got to mute for a second, Brother Joe.
You're good. You're good. So, I want to go into Thomas Sowell and let me know if you agree, disagree with what is said by Thomas Sowell. I like Thomas Sowell because he's straight to the point and he gives facts of what he's looked into himself.
Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. Thomas Sowell has taught and studied economics, intellectual history, and social policy at institutions that include Cornell, UCLA, and Amherst. Now a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, Dr. Sowell has published more than a dozen books, including his most recent volume, a revised and enlarged edition of Discrimination and Disparities. Tom Sowell, welcome.
Thank you.
Let me quote Discrimination and Disparities. This edition, this new edition, takes on the non sequitur underlying the prevailing social vision of our time, namely that if individual economic benefits are not due solely to individual merit, there is justification for having politicians redistribute those benefits. Close quote. Now, Tom, we want to be a country based on individual merit. So if some people are rich through no merit of theirs, and other people are poor through no fault of theirs, isn't it clear that the government ought to play Robin Hood and take from the rich and give to the poor? Why is that a non sequitur instead of an obvious good?
Oh my gosh. I don't know where to begin.
Take your time.
Well, you can imagine now, I'll take the extreme case where someone is literally no merit. He knows he inherits some empire. I don't know, like grocery stores or whatever. He knows nothing about it, cares nothing about it, hasn't a clue how to run it, and so on. He said, well, clearly you turn it over to the politicians. Well, what's he going to do with that empire? It will be worth far more to almost anybody else than it would be to him. Now, when things have radically different values to different people, what usually happens in a marketplace is it transfers to somebody else. If it's worth $2 billion to him, somebody who knows what he's doing, it may be worth $5 billion to him, and he will pay the $5 billion to get it, and he will run it better than a politician is going to run it.
All right. See, this is the trouble. Taping shows with you, you just talk sense, and you talk it so concisely that we may as well go have lunch right now. All right. The argument, the basic argument, let's lay out the argument here in Discrimination and Disparities. During the early 20th century, the key factor behind socioeconomic disparities, as seen by leading progressive intellectuals of that era, was genetics. In other words, some people got ahead and some people stayed behind for reasons of race.
Yes.
The racist argument. By the late 20th century, to continue the quotation, discrimination, insidious, unfair discrimination had become the prevailing explanation. All right, so let's take each of those in turn. The genetic or racist explanation. You write that by the middle of the 20th century, even a leading proponent of the influence of genetic factors, such as the infamous, I suppose to many people, Arthur Jensen of the University of California, Berkeley, up the road here, rejected the idea of an IQ ceiling for some groups. Would you explain what that means?
Well, as Jensen said, why are you surprised that there are black children with IQs of 115 and above? That in the earlier time, in the early 20th century, it was thought that there was a ceiling so low that you had to make sure that certain people simply did not reproduce. That's the whole eugenics movement,
right? Which
was very big. And there were eugenics courses by the hundreds in colleges and universities across the country. And so Jensen rejects that rendition of it. Well, once you've rejected that, really, the rest of it becomes a matter of much smaller consequence.
All right. So the racist argument is rejected on scientific grounds.
Yes, rather than by rhetoric.
All right. All right. So this brings us, of course, to the other explanation for disparate outcomes. Once again, at the heart of the prevailing social vision of our times is the seemingly invincible fallacy that group outcomes in human endeavors would tend to be equal, or at least comparable or random, if there were no biased interventions.
Yes.
And explain that for us.
Well, empirically, it is the easiest way to explain it. Almost nowhere, anywhere in the world, or in any period of history, do you find any society in which groups that compete openly end up with the same results. As on the genetic side, by the way, there's a study of families where one of the kids becomes a National Merit Scholarship finalist. In 5-child families, the firstborn becomes the finalist more times than the other 4 siblings combined. Now, that's not genetic. There are other.
It's also not discrimination. It's just luck, birth order, the luck of the draw.
Well, but it's more than that. It tells us something about the importance of parental attention in the development of a child. And that's also reinforced by the fact the twins tend to average several points lower IQ than people born singly, because obviously neither twin ever gets the full attention of the parents. And also backing that up is that where one of the twin is either stillborn or dies shortly after birth, the other twin has an average IQ much closer to the norm.
I see. Okay, so the point here is we eliminate the argument from racism, which leaves us with the argument from discrimination. And what you're saying is, no, look at example after example after example where we know in more or less controlled experiments, families with 5 kids, twins, and so forth, that there are factors that have nothing to do with justice or injustice, but that are simply happenstance. That's the argument?
Yes. Also, it's also true in 4-child families, 3-child families, 2-child families. It is true in Britain and Norway and a number of other countries where there have been huge tests done.
All right. So, again, I'm going to take discrimination and disparities to bring it to American society. It might seem strange, you're right, that during the 19th century of mass immigration from Europe to the United States, it was not uncommon to find Jewish and Italian neighborhoods in New York represented by Irish politicians, a situation that did not change until well into the 20th century. How could this have been?
Because if you look at the history of the 3 groups, it's clear that the Irish had a lot more political experience in Europe before any of them ever set foot on American soil. I mean, it's really, when you think of how many factors there are at work, it's incredible to think that they're going to work out the same for almost any group defined any way.
Got it.
And the other thing, it's so frustrating. I can come up with umpteen different examples of this disparities in various situations, including situations where it is not possible for it to be either discrimination or genetics. People on the other side cannot give you one example. You can read reams of paper by advocates of social justice and not find one example anywhere in the world. There are people who've done international studies. Braudel, I quote, the French historian. He said, in no society has all parts of the population had the same outcomes.
All right. You note also, by the way, that even within this, I've found striking, even within
So right there, Thomas Sowell gives you several different outcomes and realities to it. And I really like to stop at the 5 children one. It makes a very valid point that you can't equally distribute your time to 5 different kids. Some at some point are going to get more than others. It's just, that's the way it is. And that the Irish were the politicians and the Italians not. Did that make the Irish racist or favored? My point.
No, they were just were smart with politics and stuff. That's all.
Correct. And there's many other.
They were in that position because they were the people for the position.
And he mentions because in Europe there was more experience. We know that experience makes you better at your craft. I don't care if you've gone to college. You can go to college, and if you don't have experience in that field, that college degree is only going to take you so far. But that experience is going to give you.
Used to be. No, used to be.
I mean, in reality, right? In reality.
No. Well, I have to say that, though, and I think Thomas Sowell had to address that. And at the time when he was talking, that was actually a valid point. Whereas to now having a college degree doesn't guarantee that you're going to be the person for the job anymore.
No. What I mean by that I'm comparing.
No, I'm not disagreeing with him. At the time when this video was made, it was a valid point to stand by, right? And I think that he did another thing to address the fact that more trade people instead of college graduate kids are the ones that's prospering in society now, because the coders, the ones that have these the ones that used to be electricians or plumbers or roofers
Yes, but
or
that's still,
drywallers.
even that,
No,
right?
my point that I'm making. No. My
Even-
point that I'm making is society has shifted since this video was made. I remember this video.
No. You can apply the schooling to plumbing because you have to go to school to be a plumber.
Yeah, but you don't have to be college educated. You just have to get a trade license.
What I'm saying is, school in any form doesn't guarantee you a career. They look at the experience,
right, but a trade does.
No.
Yeah, but
no matter what field, if you have a, listen to me for a second. Let me finish. This is the reason why I'm saying this. When you fresh come out and you have just finished, you're not going to make what somebody that's been in the field with that same degree, you're not going to make what they make.
Yeah, well,
because
see, here's the problem, right?
Is what matters.
Yeah, well, let me say this, right? This is the only thing about I noticed. Thomas Sowell talks a little bit about trades, and I think, and I very well could be wrong, but I think he missed that about trades, right? Because when trades became a thing, like for instance, here's the thing. Say, for instance, I'm going to school to become a carpenter, right? While I'm going to
work, brother,
I can establish a business. Did I drop out?
You did for a second, yeah. When you first start from the beginning.
Okay, so say for instance, I go to school for being I'll say electrician, right? Now, you don't actually have to go to college. They used to tell you that you had to, because the problem is okay. Here's a trade, right? I'll give you an example of what a trade is, right? A trade was like this. You could graduate from high school and go right into becoming a person that works in the auto field, electrical field, carpentry field, the roofing field, all of these things, right? But while you're going through, after you got this trade, like say for instance that you want to extend your journeyman right there on any one of those things, right? You can establish a business, either HVAC, any one of those things, right? It doesn't require, the only degree that's required in a person that has a trade is a business degree. That's it. And you don't even have to get the full thing. So why I say that I think Thomas Sowell missed on this, I don't think that he accounted for what would happen, right? Like going to college right now puts you in debt and you get nothing in return for it. They don't even provide courses that's going to actually build a future for you anymore. You're less guaranteed to get a job as a college grad versus a person with a trade. That's the reason why since 2012, the people that went to school for trades have businesses now. I think I told you about the three little boys. Their father taught them accounting and how to buy and sell stocks and stuff at 9, 10, and 11 years old. They became millionaires by the time that they were 12 years old. What they did was they took
experience,
the trade partner. Yeah. They took that trade that they learned. Because remember, being a stockbroker, you don't go to college to become that. You can walk in off the street and be a stockbroker. All you have to do is know stocks. And the reason why I say this, right? Some people do go to school for, business, and then they apply that, this and that, or, whatever it is, advertising and so forth and so on. But I'm simply saying this, that I'll give you an example of a person that didn't graduate from college and realize that they didn't have to go to college for. Zuckerberg. What's the dude that owns Amazon? And
Bezos?
it was one other person. Yeah. Bezos and Jeff Bezos and the other Bill Gates. None of them got college degrees. All they had was trades. Remember, to design a computer, to build a computer, and to code a computer are not college courses. They are trades.
You get them you can get them in high school coding.
Right. But that's my whole point. Remember,
Well, the point that I'm trying to
cooking.
make, though, is
But here's the thing, though.
Experience is what matters. That's the point.
Right, like cooking. Yeah, I got you. I got you.
Thomas Sowell does say that because he says he makes a comparison on why people who are 40 make more money than people who are 20 because they've been in it for so long. He does make that comparison.
Yeah. But I'm just talking about the fields. The problem. Okay, so I don't know if do you know this part right here? They took auto mechanic. They took carpentry. They took home ec. They took coding, and they took all of those things that used to be trade, like Lincoln Tech and all of those stuff like that. Ivy Tech and those different colleges, stuff like that. They were actually not colleges. What they were, they called themselves colleges.
That's culinary.
Yeah, and culinary. Yeah, but those were. But the problem is they tried to tell you that those were college courses, and they're not.
They are for that perspective.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
they're not. They're going to always be trades. No.
Yes.
Hold on. Hear me out. Hold on. Hear me out. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Colleges were losing money to trade schools. So what they did was they convinced people that these were college courses that they needed to take. But they were always taking these courses, right? Lincoln Tech was not a college. It was a trade school. At one time, Ivy Tech presented themselves as a trade school. And, and the problem is people like Gordon Blue, they knew that these were trades, but they still presented themselves as a college.
So what I'm
this is what I'm trying to tell you.
A college is simply a school. That's it. A college
it's an institution to put you in debt.
No, but listen, the reality of what happens after is not what I'm addressing. It's a school.
Right.
Lincoln Tech is a school.
It is.
There's different types of schools. There's different. It's like when you have elementary school, junior high school, high school. They're all schools.
I agree. I'll definitely agree with you about that. But all I'm saying is
then you go to the college part of it, which is just still a school. You have state schools and you have universities.
Actually, state colleges used to be called trade schools.
No, listen to what I'm saying real quick. Just so you can.
I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm just saying what they used to be called. I'm listening.
So it's just a school. That's all. It's just a different name they call, but at the end of the day, it's a school, right? So,
they are schools. I agree.
That's it. So when you go to a trade school, university, whichever one you want to say,
you're more likely to be employed.
My point is this: just because you have they're going to hire the person with the more experience over the one with the degree or the educational background, right?
Yeah, but see, the only thing with a trade school though, they put the business mind there to build a business from what you're doing, not to just go to school to learn the trade, but to build a business. But in most cases, but not every case. Like when we were talking, when me, you, and Gino P was talking, and when I was saying, well, everybody should start a business, he was like, not everybody wants to start a business.
Correct.
So yeah.
So, but
that goes back to that
experience. It's the experience that matters, and I kind of want to let him go more into what he was saying because it really hammers
Yeah,
home.
go ahead.
He's talking about the equity part of it, right? That's what we're driving
Yeah.
home because everybody believes that everybody should have the same amount no matter what. That's the mindset. That's really what he's attacking.
They believe stealing hard-earned money that you got and giving it to other people. I forgot what they call that. They call that
redistributing
distribution of
wealth.
funds. Yeah, redistribution. Yeah, of funds. Yeah.
Economic bands.
What's going on, Tony Harvey?
Or ethnic groups that are actually doing pretty well. There are differences that can be striking. And to quote you again, Jews have been especially well represented in retailing, finance, and garment production, but by no means equally well represented in heavy industries such as the production of steel or automobiles.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do, we're not talking about relative disadvantage here.
Mm-hmm.
They rose to success in different fields.
Yes.
From, I don't know, Andrew Carnegie, I guess, is a Scot who's doing steel, and Ford and the Dodge brothers are what, Northern European stock who handle automobiles, and it just worked out that way.
Yes.
For no invidious reason.
Yes.
All right. You see, if you just say yes, well, of course, if I just
Greeting, peace and blessings, brother Tony, and thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for the viewership. Thank you. I hope you enjoy this here. If you do stay, thank you. If you don't, thank you.
Yeah, what's going on, Tony? Yeah, you know we always talking money and politics over here on Jeremy's channels at certain times. So
I want the
this have
people
to be one of them.
I want the people to be educated, and I want to take certain professionals that have been in a long time that I know their stuff based upon myself evaluating. I take it and I want everybody to evaluate and think for themselves, obviously, but I want to give some sort of information in regards to this because, like I said before, I love economics. I don't know why. It fascinates my mind, and that's just what I'm into. So I want to share it with everybody else, and hopefully they get an understanding. And that's what it's about.
quote the book to you, you're going to say yes.
Which is what you should do all the time.
All right. To continue here, to lay out your argument, again, I'm going to quote you, but I'm going to get more than a yes out of you, Tom, on this one. Statistical underrepresentation or overrepresentation of various groups is not peculiar to the United States or to our times. For centuries, there have been countries where most members of various professions and most business owners in whole industries have been members of some subordinate minority. All right, you present a couple of examples. Let's take a couple of examples. The overseas Chinese in Southeast Asia.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about them.
Oh, my gosh. Some people call them the Jews of Southeast Asia. Considering the numbers involved, you might call the Jews the Chinese of Eastern Europe. But there are country after country where over half of the retail outlets are by people who are Chinese. I mean, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, whatnot. There are countries after countries where most of the billionaires are Chinese.
Outside China.
Outside China. And this one of the other things, too, is this ties in to some extent with a genetic thing. As of 1994, there were 57 million overseas Chinese and 1 billion people in China. The 57 million produce as much wealth as the billion people in China.
All right. Jews in Eastern Europe, as another example of a subordinate group.
Yes.
Tell us about them.
It's very common for retailing in many parts of Eastern Europe to be largely in the hands of Jews. Greatly overrepresented in universities. By the late 19th century, 1/3 the people at the University of Vienna were Jews, and they were usually the more successful students.
Right. Indians in East Africa.
Oh my gosh. And here you see something that ties in with a desire to confiscate the wealth of the wealthy. They did that in Uganda. The people from India and Pakistan dominated modern industry in that country. Eventually, of course, the politicians decided that they should be expropriated. They were expropriated. They were sent out, not allowed to take any wealth with them of any significance. And all the stuff that was left there, their businesses and so forth, went to the Ugandan. The Ugandan economy collapsed. These people arrived destitute, mostly in England. And within a decade, they were on their way to prosperity again. The same thing with the Cubans here, that when Castro took over.
Castro takes over in 1959, 1 million Cubans leave with almost nothing.
Yes, and he left behind all the wealth they had in Cuba. You fast forward a half a century, and the Cuban-American businesses in the United States had a revenue that was larger than the revenue of the entire nation of Cuba. Even though, and they weren't, in the United States, they weren't driving 1950s cars in the 21st century.
All right. So the underlying assumption, just to close up the argument here, the underlying assumption of the social vision, the vision of social justice, that absent discrimination, roughly equal outcomes will prevail.
Pause for a second, Brother Jeremy.
Refuted by.
That's really interesting what he just said, too.
Yeah.
I like what he said about the Cubans. Yeah, I like what he said about the Cubans, because that's really interesting, right? That they wasn't driving and I noticed that, right? They drive a lot of old cars in Cuba today, but they wasn't driving old cars over here in America.
Correct.
So, in other words, the Cubans prospered. They prospered more when they came to the United States than they did in their own country, because their own country kept redistributing the hardworking people's funds.
Fidel Castro.
Kept misappropriating people's funds is what they kept doing. So yeah, that's really interesting, man.
What do you see today? What are they
I
trying
know
to do?
that. Yeah, trying to do the same thing here, but America won't allow them to do it
because it doesn't make sense.
They don't
because
like
capitalism is good for everybody.
Yeah. Whether they like capitalism or not, it still works.
It's the most effective.
It's got its pros and cons.
Well, here's the thing, Ham, and I said this earlier. I'm going to do a show on capitalism and crony capitalism. They're two different
capitalism
things.
Versus social. Capitalism versus socialism.
People confuse capitalism with crony capitalism.
Yeah.
The capitalism that people are used to is crony, which is the thievery. True capitalism is market driven solely, not who you know.
Yeah.
It's
rebuilding countries and stuff like that.
Whoever produces the best product sees the best results. It's that simple. That's capitalism to a T.
Yep. Yeah. But still, you can't forget socialism.
Socialism is worse. Correct. I agree. I agree with you. Socialism and communism is by far the worst. And he shreds that to pieces as well. And he does that with the health care in the countries that everybody's screaming, oh, they have all free health care. He shreds that in another video. And he explains why. But I don't want to digress all the way over there.
I seen that one. Yeah, I think I seen that one.
Yeah, he destroys that theory real fast. But so yeah, I want to continue into it because he's about to get into something really interesting.
Yeah. All right. Jews in Eastern Europe, overseas Chinese in Southeast Asia, they rise in spite of discrimination.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
And they rise better than the people who are discriminating against them.
All right. We tend to think, I believe, of this new social vision, social justice, as something completely contemporary, but you write that it has been prevalent for half a century. You also argue not merely that it is mistaken, but that it has done positive harm.
Yes.
Discrimination and disparities. With the prevailing social vision came a more non-judgmental approach to behavior, as well as multiculturalism, a de-emphasis on policing and punishments, and an emphasis on demographically based fair shares for all. So what you're talking about here is not explicitly governmental action or government programs, but the way people begin thinking about society. In the United States, you continue murder rates, rates of infection with venereal diseases, and rates of teenage pregnancies were among the social pathologies whose steep declines in the 1950s reverse and begin to get worse in the 1960s. Okay. Ideas alone, it's what people carry in their heads.
But the ideas were carried out in policies. And the classic place were in public housing projects. People today think of the public housing projects as really just a bedlam and violence and so forth.
Drug dens and so forth.
Yeah. I remember in the 1940s, one of our relatives was admitted to a public housing project in New York, and we were so proud because back in those days, you got admitted because even though you were just a working person, you had a good record, you had a steady job. Women with fatherless children were not admitted, and so on. And so it was not just that the place was good; it was that it was an honor that he'd passed these tests to get into these places.
You tell a tale of two blackouts that illustrate what's taking place here. The first blackout takes place in November 1965. I can actually remember that. We lived in upstate New York.
I lived in upstate New York.
And there was I can remember when we were having dinner and the lights in the house went dark and then came back up for a moment. We all looked at each other and thought, what just happened there? Well, of course, when we turned on the television, we found out what happened. Huge power outage in New York City, whereas upstate, the lights just went down and came back on. In New York City, the city went black for a whole night.
Yes.
And you write that night, the crime rate was lower than usual, 1965. Second blackout, very similar event, takes place in July 1977. And you write again, New York City was again dark throughout the night, but now there was widespread looting and arson.
Yes.
65 people behaved themselves in New York City in the dark.
Yes.
And in 70, so what happens in those 12 years?
This was one of the many things that turned to the worst in the 1960s. There's a whole slew of them. Steven Pinker has a book about international murder rates, and he said the general trend over the centuries is for the murder rate to go down, but in the 1960s the rate did a U-turn, as he put it. It went right up, and this was common across Western societies.
And it is because of
the same vision out there.
And the vision. So I'm trying to, I guess one thing I'm trying to get at here is the extent to which, how does it work itself out? Are the cops, because of this new social vision between 1965, people know that if they try looting or arson, the cops will come right at them?
No.
There's
only so much the cops can do. The first line of defense is morality and the law as a statement of what the principles are. You delegitimize that, and all you've got are the police. There aren't that many police. You could double the number of policemen, and if you destroy the morality, you're not getting anywhere.
So in 1965, people who'd grown up, let's see, 65, that's going to be dominated by people who'd been through, the adults in 65 remember the Depression.
Yes.
They remember the Second World War.
Yes.
They've had the experience of rebuilding the country in the 1950s, and they take for granted what we would now term traditional morality. Is that correct?
Yes.
You just don't steal things.
Yes.
You don't destroy property.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, no, another example. There was Exchange Buffet restaurants that I mentioned.
Yes.
And I actually remember going to those. And
Exchange Buffet. Explain what's going on.
The Exchange Buffet, you go in and you go through the line and pick up your own food, and then you bring your dishes over there, and then you come to the cashier and you tell the cashier how much you owe.
And there were 70 some of these restaurants there were a lot of them in New York. Dozens. All
right. And they lasted for 78 years. In the 1960s, they collapsed because people no longer were honest.
All right.
In England, it was even more dramatic because they really sort of set the standard for self-controlled societies. And of course, if you have a lot of self-control, you don't need a lot of government control.
Right.
But if you don't have it, the government is not going to be enough by itself. And the government itself is often tainted, as it were, by these same ideas that for example, in London in 1954, there were a grand total of 12 armed robberies in the city of London that year, at a time when anybody could buy a shotgun with no questions asked. Fast forward a couple of decades, and they're at 1,400 armed robberies in London, despite some of the most strict gun control laws in the world.
Got it. I'm still struck. What do we make about the speed with which society changes? Again, you've got what I love about the two blackouts is because they're two they're almost literally what do people get up to when they think nobody's looking, when the lights go out. And it's just a dozen years between good behavior, people helping each other out in this difficult night, and terrible behavior where they're looting and setting fire to property. And how is it that the wrong ideas can percolate through, can so change behavior in such a brief period of time?
Well, it was going. I mean, these ideas weren't invented in the 1960s,
right?
But the number of people who progressively moved towards those ideas greatly increased, and the whole political and intellectual scene was very different.
All right. You spend a good deal of time in discrimination and disparities on the African American experience in this country. And in particular, you spend time presenting what might almost be termed a century of hidden history, hidden outside, but displayed in this book. I'm going to quote you. The plain fact is that the Black poverty rate declined, I should say the hidden century, from the end of the Civil War to the enactment of the Great Society, which is pretty much an even 100 years.
Yes.
And on one measure after another, you argue, African Americans make progress.
Yes.
Their incomes rise. Educational attainment begins to take off. Family structure remains intact, more intact by some measures than that of white Americans. And now to quote you, the plain fact is that the Black poverty rate declined from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960, prior to the great expansion of the welfare state that began in the 1960s under the Johnson administration. And as late as 1969, 2/3 of all Black children were living with Black parents. And then we get the Great Society enacted.
So that statistic alone, I want to stop at that statistic. 87% were above poverty in the 1940s. 87% of Black Americans in the United States
were above
What's
poverty.
the poverty rate in the Black community now?
13%.
So facts
and
matter.
Of those 13%, I think either 3 or 4% of the Black community are above the poverty line.
So something happened. Ham, you and I know what happened, but for the viewers,
they forgot God. They forgot God.
That's the first point. The second point is, and this is why the second point happened. The first point is the reason why the second point happened. What was instituted, Brother Ham, in the 1960s?
Welfare, integration, Lyndon B. Johnson, welfare, government assistance, public housing, and divorce, criminal activity. What else? venereal diseases, a lot of kids being born out of wedlock. It's just a number of things, but those are some of the things that I can think of right off the head.
So,
and they
1940.
and they grew exponentially.
So, Brother Ham, correct me if I'm wrong. Was Jim Crow in the 1940s?
Not really. Yeah. 1940s, yes, definitely. So I apologize. So yes, you are absolutely correct. Yeah.
So people in the Jim Crow era,
they
were
more prosperous.
Granted, some people did awful things. I'm not discrediting that, but when you look at the overall number,
well, Jim Crow wasn't what everybody thought it was, because it didn't affect a lot of people. Not everybody bought into that. Because if that was the case, then we wouldn't have had a Black Wall Street. And then even before Wall Street, you had other prosperous places like Atlanta and certain parts of Florida and even Mississippi where blacks were prosperous at. And even up in New York and Boston and different places like that. So during that time, it was some that was, and don't get me wrong, it was criminal activity, but not as bad.
Of course. So you made a point about the public housing. Thomas Sowell gave a great illustration of when he was living in New York in 1940. He said it was a privilege to live in the public housing. And he stated a numerous amount of things that you had to have in order to be allowed in there. It's completely reversed.
No, they lowered the standard.
So people had higher standards.
I heard him when he said, I heard him when he said that, and I thought about it. I was like, so what they did was Lyndon B. Johnson them lowered the standard.
So when you lower the standards of when you lower your personal standards, what happens?
Anybody gets in.
No, I'm saying you personally. When you lower your standards, what happens to you?
You become accepting to people's bad behaviors, this and that.
You do less. You become less prosperous because your standards are lower.
Mm-hmm.
When you keep your standards at a good rate and you strive to do better, and your standards are higher as a whole, and even as a person, you will desire to do better, which will make you work towards your goal.
You know the old statement, if you knew better, you'd do better.
So I wanted to stop there because now we're going to get into how he destroys the narrative that's placed that every United States youngster automatically, and keep in mind, this is a man that grew up in 1940s Harlem. He grew up in North Carolina. He was born in North Carolina. At the age of 8 years old, he moved and this is when racism was prevalent. And he moved from North Carolina. He was sent up to New York City.
Yep.
And when you listen to how he describes New York City then, and you look at it now, think for yourself, where did it go wrong? Now I'm going to continue to play because he's going to throw some facts out there, and it might offend some people, but that's all right.
Again, I quote you, there was a far more modest decline in poverty rate among blacks after the Johnson administration's massive war on poverty. And by 1995, only 1/3 of black children were living with both parents. And among black families in poverty, 85% of the children had no father present.
Yes.
A century of intact African-American families and economic and educational progress. And then it all begins to slide away. Things start to get worse. What happened?
Well, the welfare state itself happened, but more than that, it's the welfare state vision. the idea that the world owes you something takes off. And it happens. It happened in Britain where the underclass is white. It's amazing the parallels. And similarly, the notion with schools. In Britain, kids in low income neighborhoods who want to learn get beaten up by their classmates because that's regarded as class treachery. Over there, it's class that's the big deal. Here, it's race. But the net result is the same.
Tom, you had to have been a good student when you were a little kid growing up in Harlem. What reaction do you remember anybody saying no, don't be too good a student? You'll make everybody else look bad in the family. Or what was it like in your generation when people were beginning to discover that little Tommy Sowell was a pretty smart kid?
Well, actually, when I first got to Harlem, I was not regarded as a pretty smart kid because I'd come out of the South. And back in those days, the Southern education was so inferior to the Northern education that
you were behind when you were
my gosh, I was in North Carolina. I was among the top students in the class, and in my first year in New York, I was trailing whoever was the second worst student in the class.
How old were you when you moved from North Carolina up to Harlem?
9.
Okay. So, but somewhere in there, you get a library card and you start reading and you become a good student. And what is the reaction of your family and your neighbors and so forth as you begin to become a good student?
Well, the neighbors didn't really know that. Oh, the family was there. They were so pleased. And I still remember what a to-do they made when I was promoted to the 7th grade. And I wondered why. And someone said to me, "You've now gone further than any of us."
Wow. Wow. You've just explained we get a century of progress, then a retrogression, as you call it.
And the economics was not the reason. I mean, there's no question that blacks in the 1960s had a higher standard of living than blacks in 1940.
Right. So why is it? I have to say, I get to the passages about African-American progress, that century of progress, and I have to reread them because they run so counter to what I believe I understand, which is that the legacy of slavery is so deeply impressed on African Americans, and it's the Great Society that begins to make some progress. How is it that a whole century of American history is simply gone? It doesn't get talked about. What's the explanation for that?
Heavens! That's not the only thing. As you know from one of the other chapters there, the people who talk about the 1920s, the history of the 1920s is taught, including in a history book written by a Stanford professor that sells for $160 that I bought recently. And he tells you what happened, what Andrew Mellon said, and how this was tax cuts for the rich. And all you have to do is pick up Mellon's book, and you'll find out what Andrew Mellon said. And all you have to do is go on the internet and get the IRS data of the 1920s. You find that it bears no resemblance to what is said in this history book that costs $160.
So ideology trumps historical understanding.
I mean, I have the IRS data for every year of the 1920s in my file, and it's just farcical. And these are not stupid people. And I don't believe that all of them are lying. I believe that they've heard what other people have said and they've repeated it, and they haven't bothered to check the facts.
All right. Back to the African American experience. The biggest internal migration in American history takes place as African Americans move from the South up to northern cities.
Yes.
And it's almost, again, a kind of two snapshots. Again, I'm quoting Discrimination and Disparities. As blacks in northern cities, this is the first arrivals to northern cities, become more acculturated to the norms of the larger society, racial barriers begin to erode.
This is in the 19th century.
Right. In Illinois, restrictions on access to public accommodations for blacks are removed. In Detroit, blacks had been denied the right to vote in 1850, but they were voting by the 1880s. And then the 1890s, blacks were being elected to statewide offices in Michigan. The 1880 census showed that in Detroit, it was not uncommon for blacks and whites to live next door to each other. Okay, African Americans moved.
It sounds contrary to what they teach you, right? That sounds contrary.
Yeah, my mic, I couldn't get my mic unmuted. But yeah, it does. Because they made it seem like all that was happening, people try to make it seem like all that was happening was redlining and stuff like that. And to me, I really don't know too much about the redlining stuff like that. Maybe one day I'll do a study on that, but I don't know. I mean, you got pros and cons to everything. Like some areas were different
Correct.
than others.
Correct. But it's taught that nationwide it was all the same.
Right. But I like what
This is
Tom
what
the
I'm
Soul
saying.
say, like these people, like he bought that $160 book and it wasn't even accurate.
Correct. And he said he has every federal tax from the 1920s. And it's not what that book says that they're being taught.
Right.
This is what I'm saying. The narrative has been put that way.
Yeah.
The narrative has been put that way to cause division. They want to bring back division. You can't see it?
Yeah. No, I don't miss that at all. People are talking about race wars and all this and that. Just foolishness.
Correct. But statistics and history tell a different story than what people are speaking or teaching in schools. So one thing I learned at a later age, and I wish I didn't learn at a later age, but it is what it is. Reading is so fundamental for young minds.
Mm-hmm.
So actually picking up a book and reading is so fundamental because you begin to learn a vocabulary, you know what words mean, and you're able to distinguish truth from lie when you read a thing and when you hear a thing because you know the importance of the meaning of the word.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Start reading more, less videos. I mean, I have books. I'm starting to grow my own book collection. Obviously, the scriptures is number one, but outside of that, I'm reading Thomas Sowell's books. I'm reading autobiographies on Malcolm X. I'm reading them on the Native Americans. I'm reading them on so many different things, but they're books with facts and statistics. And that's the important part. Look at the facts, not the rhetoric, and think for yourself.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
So what do you think, Brother Ham, about what he mentioned?
Which part?
Just the most one we just listened to.
Well, I mean, like I said, what really caught my attention was what did he say, man? I forgot that fast. I was gonna say it. I was thinking about it, and you were talking, and I had it there, and then forgot it that quick.
My bad.
The last part. Now I'm kind of thrown off a little bit. I'll remember when I ain't thinking about it. So
you want me to go back a few?
But yeah, so I can remember exactly what he was talking about.
Up to northern.
But I know I was thinking about it when he was talking.
It's almost again a kind of two snapshots. Again, I'm quoting Discrimination and Disparities as blacks in northern cities. This is the first arrivals to northern cities, become more acculturated to the norms of the larger society. Racial barriers.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I got it. I got it.
In Illinois.
Yeah, so what I was saying about when they was talking about red line, And then how they try to say that there wasn't mixed neighborhoods and stuff like that. That's one thing I say about where I live at in Indiana, right? I know what it means to live in a mixed neighborhood, right? Like for instance, right, we were the first blacks to move into a white neighborhood, and then it got integrated to it was a few whites that still stayed in the neighborhood, but most of them moved out and moved up to the suburbs and stuff like that. And then there were a couple of white couples that still lived there, which were real nice people. You know, they were our neighbors. And actually, you know what was weird though? We actually it was like one street out of all of the whole neighborhood where you very seldom seen any crime there.
So what year was this, Brother Ham?
This was 1970.
1970.
No,
Okay.
1980. 1980. Early 1980s. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And no, late 70s. Late 70s. Let me correct that. Late 70s, because I was about 78, 79, somewhere around there. So really
this
the 80s.
is the Midwest, correct?
Yeah. I think when I moved over there, we were the first black family, then another black family moved in, and then another one. And they kind of started, I mean, then you had the one family that moved in that could afford to move over there, but they brought their relatives that caused all of the problems. And they didn't even stay long because they lost their house.
Mm.
And then another family moved in, and another one. And one thing I will say is the white people that lived in the neighborhood, kind of left something behind that a lot of the black people in that neighborhood kept, as you know, watching out for their neighbors, you know, speaking to each other, because we all the neighbors talk to each other and stuff like that. And this was like in about a 4-block radius up and down the street, but then it was other blocks where blacks were moving in, or those blocks and stuff like that. Like I said, eventually it became an all-black neighborhood, except for like there was a few white people that still stayed there. But you know, the crime was up in other parts of the neighborhood. I know, because I mean when I left, like for a long time till I got older, I didn't leave my neighborhood. And you know, like seeing stuff I used to see stuff on TV, right?
Mm.
And I mean, and it was the United States, and it seemed so foreign to me, right?
Yeah.
And now that I look back and I think of where I came from, like, cause I, you know, as a child, we lived in the projects, rats, roaches, 9 kids in a 2-bedroom apartments, you know, and then going from living in the projects to even my mother and father and them struggling a little bit, and they lost the apartment, so we had to live with our grandmother, and we lived with our grandmother when she stayed in the hood, but she had a nice house in the hood. Everybody's, you know, to this day still remember my grandmother's house, right? But you know, which is crazy that when my mother and father moved in with my grandmother, they were able to save money, and that's why I said eventually they saved enough where we moved from in the hood to over into being the first black family to move into a white neighborhood. And it was, to them, it was straight, like, and our house wasn't that big, right? It was before my daddy got an addition built onto the house. Before my daddy got an addition built onto the house, I think we had, let me see, 1, 2, we had 3 bedrooms. When my daddy got the addition built onto the house, it turned into a 5-bedroom for a 3-story house.
Mm.
And that house raised 9 kids, plus my cousins.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we're gonna kind of we'll get back into it because that's a very interesting point that was made by you, Brother Ham, and how you grew up, because that's context is important. Different life experiences and things like that are important to get the overall picture. So thank you for sharing that. It's very helpful.
Oh yeah.
Restrictions on access to public accommodations for blacks are removed. In Detroit, blacks had been denied the right to vote in 1850, but they were voting by the 1880s. And then the 1890s, blacks were being elected to statewide offices in Michigan. The 1880 census showed that in Detroit, it was not uncommon for blacks and whites to live next door to each other. Okay, African Americans move north and all kinds of racial progress takes place. But then, and again, I quote you, however, a major retrogression set in later in northern cities with the arrival of large masses of black migrants from the South in the early 20th century. So describe that retrogression. What begins to go wrong?
Well, in Washington, D.C., for example, blacks had been able to go to various restaurants, theaters, and so on, prior to the mass migrations that began in the early 20th century. When I first arrived in Washington, blacks could not go to those things in 1950.
So things had gotten worse.
Oh, yes, yes. And it's not so much the movement of blacks to the north in the 19th centuries. It was blacks who were in the north, which are very small populations. And they're surrounded by a vastly larger white population. And with other groups in similar situations, you get acculturation by the smaller group to the norms of the larger group over a period of time. And so it wasn't a big migrations, but the blacks, for example, at the end of the 19th century in New York, most blacks in New York had been born in New York.
At the end of the 19th century.
Yes.
Right.
And so you had a very different population than you had when you have massive numbers of people.
All right. You write, neither the era of progress in race relations nor the era of retrogression were simply inexplicable mood swings among whites. The behavior of blacks themselves had changed.
Yes.
Now explain that.
Well, the South is a different culture. And again, to some extent, I was an example of that my education was just not the same as the education of kids who've been in Harlem all along. So it took me, a year or two to catch up.
I see. Okay. So, all right. I'm trying to think this through, that if the...
I mean, for example, I a story that I've told so many times, that my family found a black kid in Harlem who was very well educated and so forth, and they made it a point that he should meet me and show me the ropes. And he took me to a public library at the age of 9. I had no idea what a public library was. And it was only with great reluctance that was I persuaded to take out a library card and borrow a couple of books. But of course, that was a turning point.
Got it. Social justice today. Social justice, the idea of correcting for unequal outcomes, in particular, redistributing wealth from the rich to the poor. So you've already argued, we've already discussed this, that the very notion is ahistorical and misguided, but you argue something more. There is a crucial question as to whether the redistribution of income of wealth can actually be done in any comprehensive and sustainable sense. Close quote. What do you mean?
Well, I've used the example before of the
we need to send a telegram to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez here.
Oh, I think it would be a vast waste of money. But I've used the example so far of the Cubans,
right,
and of the East Asians, but they're all over the places. In the 15th century, in the end of the 15th century, Spain decided to expel all Jews, and as often happens in these cases, they're not allowed to take any wealth with them. And so they go to various places, including the Netherlands. And over time, they again rise to prosperity in the Netherlands, helping to increase the Netherlands economy. the Huguenots in France were being persecuted. They flee to England and Switzerland, and they take their skills with them. Now, prior to that time, France was big. There was no watch industry in England prior to the arrival of the Huguenots. So now the British could buy their watches from London instead of from France. And moreover, the London watchmakers could compete in the international market with the French watchmakers. And in Switzerland, this is what helped Switzerland to become and remain to this day the dominant watchmaking country in the world. I mean, you can't confiscate the source of their wealth. You can confiscate, and although I didn't go into it in this book, this is true of people who want to do this on a local community level. I mean, Detroit was once a prosperous place. They followed policies that drove the prosperous people out, and then of course they had to leave all their businesses and so forth in Detroit. That was of no use without the people who knew how to operate it. Those people, I'm sure, have done much better. Detroit has never fully recovered from that.
So the idea here is you can confiscate wealth.
It's already existing.
You can confiscate
but it wears
material
out.
goods.
Yes.
But what point is it? All right. So again, I'm going to quote the book once again. Physical wealth is a product of human capital, the knowledge, skills, talents, and other qualities that exist inside the heads of people where it cannot be confiscated.
Yes.
Closed quote. So the central question, you're going to correct me if I get this wrong, because I have a feeling you're going to slap me around for what I'm about to say. The central question, not just of economic growth, but of social justice, is not the distribution of wealth. It's access to human capital. It's access to education is really what it comes down to.
Human capital
right?
it encompasses education,
Encompasses
but it's not limited to that.
So because it's also the store. So where you have social pathology, it's very hard. I'm just making this up to see how you respond to it. It's very hard. For example, figure that I quoted earlier, where African-American kids living in poverty, 85% of them grow up with only one parent present. That makes it harder for those kids.
No two ways about it.
To acquire human capital. So access to education. I'm fumbling here.
Yeah.
Access to education. Somehow, is it the role of government to foster certain kinds of social stability or social skills?
Well, all you can do, you can't give anybody an education. You can offer them an education.
You can show them where the public library is.
That's right. But that's it.
Okay.
I want to stop right there, because he talked about human capital as in skills, things you offer, things that you can excel at. Then he goes a step further and says you can show it to somebody, but you can't make them do it. Don't we see the same thing in the scriptures? You can show somebody the scriptures. Doesn't mean they're going to accept it. Everybody has opportunity, but not everybody wants the opportunity. That's what I gather. When you give somebody, hey, if you do this and this, you will gain that. Well, I don't want to do that. I want it given to me. I want this route. What are you going to do to get that? Sometimes people don't want to take the blessing they're given, and they reject it. Everybody has an opportunity because everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. What you do with that 24 hours is up to you. You can't blame everybody else if 16 hours of the day you're sitting on your behind. You have nobody to blame but yourself. If you're not going out and doing it, look at yourself and say, I'm the reason. That's what that just demonstrated. And he took his own. He was introduced to the library, and what he did with that information is he grabbed hold of it and ran with it. And here he is today. What are your thoughts, Brother Ham? Brother Ham, you with us? Maybe Brother Ham's out something, or maybe he just is on service. But what do you guys think about that? What are your thoughts? You tell me. Is Thomas Sowell wrong, or is he right? So I'll continue in the video.
All right.
And something else. So social justice is an actual impediment to acquiring human capital, because what it tells you is that the reason you have less is because people have malevolently kept you from having access to all the good things in life. And if that's the case, why in the world should you knock yourself out, learn a whole new culture, develop whole sets of skills and so forth, sacrificed in the present for the future, when it's going to mean nothing? Two of the stories I've heard that really pains me greatly, a couple of young black guys, there's two different guys and two different sets of stories, expressed a desire to become a pilot. And they say, I thought about joining the Air Force, but I realized that the white people are not going to let me become a pilot. And they're saying this after there was a whole squadron of black fighter pilots in World War II, and after there have been black generals in the Air Force. But this vision that they're bombarded with tells them that that's not possible. That something that's already happened is not possible.
So the notion that you've been wrong,
yes,
has the effect of what? Of encouraging passivity?
No,
or
resentment, but not because social mobility is not some easy thing. I don't know if you read the book about the Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh yes. J.D. Vance.
Yes,
Vance, right.
And he go. What a trauma it is for him.
It was hard
to come out of his background and achieve something in the world. Why in the world would you put yourself through that if you thought that at the end of it all they're going to say, no, we're not going to let you fly any of our planes, damn it.
Right. And also, if you think you've been wronged, your recourse might also be more likely to politics, to try to redress this whole redistribution.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Rather than hit the books, acquire the skills, get the job.
But the other thing too, one of my favorite statistic in there is that the poverty rate among blacks as a whole is 22%. Among whites as a whole is 11%, and among black married couples is 7.5%.
So
and it's been and black married couples have never had a poverty rate as high as 10% in any year since 1994.
All right. So to the cry, what is to be done? Tom Sowell answers,
it's been done.
Get an education, get married, have kids after you get married. That's sort of the answer, right?
Well, yes, and the things that work for other people tend to work pretty generally.
All right. Reparations. I knew you'd like this one. New York Times columnist David Brooks, in a column last month entitled "The Case for Reparations," quote, "We are at a moment of make or break racial reckoning. We are a nation coming apart at the seams, a nation in which each tribe has its own narrative, and the narratives are generally resentment narratives. The need now is to consolidate all the different narratives and make them reconciliation and possibility narratives. Reparations are a drastic policy and hard to execute. But the very act of talking about and designing them, reparations policies, heals a wound.
Oh, it's one of many reasons I don't read David Brooks. But go ahead.
Heals a wound and opens a new story. Close quote.
You can imagine somebody whose parents, great-grandparents, came here in the 1880s after the Civil War, being asked to give reparations to people. Yeah, even in the antebellum South, most whites did not have slaves. The cost of one male adult slave was more than the average white person earned all year. So they weren't all living in terror with their plantations and all the rest of it. It's insane. The other thing, I have a slight sidebar in there on the history of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
The history of slavery existed all over the world for thousands of years among all sorts of people, as far back as the history of the human species goes. It's one of many evils that the left tries to localize, when in fact it is a universal evil.
So, is this too strong a statement that it is what is distinctive about the United States is not that it countenanced slavery in the 18th and 19th centuries, but that it has taken such efforts to overcome the legacy of slavery since? Is that fair?
That's part of it. But more than that, as much as slavery is repudiated around the world today, prior to the 18th century, I know of no serious effort to abolish the institution anywhere.
Anywhere.
Not
in Africa, not in the Arabian
world.
Not
in Africa in the 21st century. When Adam Smith wrote in 1776 that the only place in the world where slavery had been abolished completely was Western Europe. And so this was
as late as the year this country was founded.
Yes. And so the idea that this is something that the United States had that nobody else had, or the other countries that didn't have, it's been estimated that there are more slaves in India than in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that's before and after Columbus got here.
Right. Last questions, Tom. A statistic. In 2015, this is the most recent year I could find. In 2015, Black households at the 20th and 40th percentiles of household income earned an average of 55% as much as white households at those same percentiles, 20th and 40th. And that figure from that figure from 2015 is exactly the same as the figure in 1967. So you can imagine people of goodwill looking at that and saying, only 55% as much as white households, and it hasn't changed since 1967. Dr. Sowell, I grant all of these arguments, but even at that, something must be done. And Tom Sowell replies, how?
One way would be to get rid of the welfare state. But also those kind of numbers are very
That's
misleading.
not what they have in mind, I don't think.
Perhaps not. One of the problems with those kind of numbers, which I go into in a different chapter on numbers, is that household and family income statistics have a lot of problems with them, and they don't reflect, for example, in-kind transfers.
Right.
And the in-kind transfer is not
from government welfare payments.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But more than that, the in-kind transfers are among the reasons that people don't have to earn more money.
Right. Okay. Once again, discrimination and disparities. The most spectacularly successful political doctrine in the 20th century was Marxism. Yet if the wealth of rich capitalists came from the exploitation of poor workers, then we might expect to find that where there are larger concentrations of rich capitalists, we would find correspondingly larger concentrations of poverty. The facts point in the opposite direction. Explain what you mean by this.
Well, the United States has 5 times as many billionaires as there are in all of the Middle East and Africa put together. And so, according to the logic of Marxism, ordinary Americans should have a lower standard of living than the standard of living of people in the Middle East and Africa. It is just the opposite. I mean, Americans on welfare have a higher standard of living than the average person in Africa and the Middle East.
So Marxism is simply wrong,
Wrong.
demonstrably wrong,
Yes.
obviously wrong.
Well, obvious to some people.
All right, obvious to you. Now, I lured you into a trap. A recent YouGov poll found that 19% of millennials, 1 in 5 young Americans, holds a favorable view of communism.
Yes.
Now, let me quote one of these young millennials, a new member of Congress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who represents the Bronx, not all that far from where you grew up. Quote, "To me, capitalism is irredeemable." Close quote. Tom Sowell replies,
To me, she's irredeemable.
But to the okay, so let's set Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to one side. To the 1 in 5 young Americans who holds a favorable view of communism, how can this be? What's going on?
I think the education system has a lot to do with that. Back when I was quite young, 20 years old, I read a book called China Shakes the World about how the communists took over in China. And in the last chapter, he tries to explain it. He says it's the education system had a lot to do with it. Now, at the time, it struck me as a very odd explanation. Now that I've had a half a century or so in the American education system, it doesn't strike me as odd at all.
All right. Tom, would you close by reading a passage from your book, from this new edition of Discrimination and Disparities?
The last Western nation to end slavery, Brazil, did so in 1888, and the first totalitarian dictatorship arose in Russia in 1917. There was barely a generation between the suppression of one form of monumentally brutal subjugation of human beings and the creation of another. Yet these dehumanizing dictatorships were often founded on stirring rhetoric and lofty visions that resonated with many leading intellectuals in countries around the world. There could hardly be a clearer example of the need for the historic warning, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.
Tom Sowell, author of this new edition of Discrimination and Disparities, thank you.
Thank you.
For Uncommon Knowledge, the Hoover Institution, and Fox Nation, I'm Peter Robinson.
So, with statistical facts and specific dates, Thomas Sowell yet again shreds the narrative about where this country is going and the desires they have. This country is going down the toilet. This country is lazy. This country is incompetent. Speaking of leaders and people who are teaching this nonsense. This country does not run on systematic racism. This country does not a white supremacist. There was a gentleman who said, was it a gentleman? Oh no, it was a woman who said that owning a home is a form of white supremacy. Let that sink in. You know what? I'm going to find that for you. And you tell me what you think. And this is the way we're thinking now. This is the way we're thinking now in this country. This is our generation of children. They want the state to own it and to give it to who the state sees fit. That's what's going on in New York. That's what the mayor's trying to accomplish. So this is the way. And I want you to hear for yourself. So this is where our leadership is heading. If I dare say leadership at all. Well, they're leading, but they're leading us down a path of no return.
Zohran Mamdani, as director of the mayor's office to protect tenants, are drawing backlash online after she previously described home ownership and private property as a weapon of white supremacy. The posts, dating back to 2018 and 2019, were amplified by conservative accounts on X as critics questioned her views on property and housing policy. Weaver.
I want to find it exactly. Everything is white supremacy. Everything is a form of white supremacy. I've never heard white supremacy so much in my life. It's kind of disgusting. I don't even know why you would take part in any of that. That's just pure madness. But you know. Let's see if ready?
8th birthday to the MTA, and thank you for getting me home from Midtown at 9 p.m. in less than 30 minutes. Okay, pretty cool. Private property, including and kind of especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy masquerading as wealth building public policy. Oh, okay.
I think everybody would want their own property. And let me ask you a question. Do you believe you should be paying property tax for the land that you own to the government? So this is where our fantastic country's mindset is going, which is why I can appreciate Thomas Sowell. I can appreciate how he dismantles the narratives. Is there racism in the country? Of course there's racism. Is it to the scale that's propped up? No. But there are going to be racist people both ways. Economics, like Pastor Jennings said first, seek God first. Totally agree with what Pastor Jennings says on that, wholeheartedly. After you have put God first, you allow God to make me prosper, and guess what he's going to do? He's going to give you freedom in different ways, right? You will be more successful, as Pastor Jennings is a living example of how he's become prosperous by putting God first. You read it in the scriptures, so it is possible. But what you need is to get rid of the mindset that people have placed in the school systems, on social media. It's utter stupidity. Utter stupidity. Because if the system is rigged for the white man, why are there so many rich black people, rich Chinese people, rich Indian people, rich Spanish people? There's rich people in all different groups, ethnicities. You won't find it in any other country. You won't. That's a fact. Is this country perfect? No. But it's, as far as being able to do better for you and your family, it surpasses the vast majority, if not all. You just have to be willing to work for it. Get out, get on your grind, educate your mind, pick up a book, study how to improve yourself, because God's just not going to drop something in your
in your back pocket and say, here you go. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to learn nothing. You don't have to work. You don't have to do nothing. I'm just going to drop it in your. No, that's crazy. God is going to give you the opportunity and the ability to do so. It's up to you to take it and go with it. Start educating your mind. Start learning economics. Start freeing yourself from the plague of quote unquote social justice, which has created more poverty than anything. You don't think so? Go out and look at your areas, certain areas. The proof is in the pudding. All these programs, all these social movements, nobody's climbing out of poverty. Because a movement doesn't get you out of poverty. Educating your mind and hard work does. For all you who want a business, go for it. For all you who want to do a certain profession, go for it. For all of you who want to do better for your family and yourself, go for it. Don't sit on your hands. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Go after that dream that you have. Go after it. Go after it. Don't let people bombard you saying, oh, because you're a certain ethnicity or a certain sex or a certain this, that you can't do it. Get out of here. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. If it's God's will first, but you can do what you set your mind to, because God gave you that mind to be used for his glory and for bettering you and your family's lives. Whatever you want to do. You want to make clothing, go make clothing. You want to start making healthy things for people, do it. You want to own a furniture store, do it. You want to own your own carpentry business, do it. You want to own your own masonry business, do it. You want to own your own label printing company, do it. Whatever it is you want to do to succeed for you and your family, according to scripture, do it. I don't want to hear these false prophets say, he's telling you to do it. He's going against Pastor Jerry's teachings. We know how they are. No, we all know according to scripture first. But in the natural, whatever you want to do to succeed, do it. You can do it. You don't need welfare. You don't need Medicaid. You don't need any of that. If you have everything working and you're not limited, obviously due to physical limitations and whatnot, and or mental, real mental talking. You know, obviously a kid who has autism is going to need the help, right? But those who can, do it. Do it. I want to hear stories of all of you doing well. I want to hear stories of how you've succeeded. I want to hear stories about you prospering and helping and doing better for you and your family. I want to hear those stories. Tired of hearing the stories about boo-hoo, poor me, I can't do it. This one's holding me down, that one's holding me down. No. I want to hear the stories of all my brothers and sisters doing well in whatever field they're choosing. You want to be a nurse, whatever it is. You want to be a doctor, whatever it is. You want to be a lawyer, whatever it is. I want to hear those stories. I want to hear positive, wonderful stories of all my brothers and sisters. That brings me joy. That is what I love to hear. I love to hear how well you guys are doing. I love to hear how you've overcome. I love to hear all of those things. So I show you these videos and we go over these things. I know it's maybe not as it's not as popular as some of the other YouTube channels do it, but we all have our perspective place. This is mine. But all those who do, I pray and hope you get an understanding from it. And I pray and hope it helps you. Because that's all it's about, is helping everybody, however I can. However I can. If this is how I can help by being a good brother this way, hey, I'm cool with that. Works for me. That's perfect. So snap fraud and all this stuff, this is why it's got to go. So till the next time, this is Exposing the Works of Darkness with Brother Dunbar. Thank you all for tuning in. I thank you all for your help. I thank you all for your viewership. I thank you all for your feedback, no matter what it is. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, is there something that you'd like to hear? Maybe something you'd like to learn, whatever it is. Feel free to leave it in the chat or in the comments section. And Lord willing, I will try to get it to the best of my ability and as fast as possible as I can for you. I ask that you just be patient with me and keep me and my family in your prayers. Keep one another in prayer. Keep Pastor Jennings and the minister and brethren in prayer. Keep yourself in prayer. And keep your own family in prayer as well. And keep those who are lost out there in prayer, that they may come to the truth. Pray that all the ones who are in falsehood, that they come out. So till the next time, this is Brother Dunbar signing off. Peace be unto you.